9. Villa's newly acquired information left him with a problem. Most of the knowledge he had gained in recent years had either been passed on to Avon or in moments of crisis used immediately. But Villa knew that going to Avon's cabin and confronting him with the discovery would probably end up with little more than a closed door in his face. It would certainly not bring about a democratic vote, and even if it did, he had no idea which way Carell would vote, nor that Avon would actually abide by any decision taken. Villa returned to Cat, told him of the answer he had worked out, and asked the computer for advice. "Sir, I don't have the necessary background to give that information," Cat told him, which, as Villa replied, was not the sort of answer he was looking for. "Then, sir, I suggest you do nothing," advised the machine. "Avon's actions will either confirm or deny your assumptions. If you are proved to be right, you may still have time to put your knowledge to good use, and if not, you will at least be well prepared if Avon chooses not to share his secret with his crew. Confronting him with the knowledge now will do no good." And since that was the conclusion that Villa had already reached, he decided to go along with it. Together, man and machine chose a drink. For 3 further days, the ship continued its dull routine. Each of the crew took an 8-hour watch, followed by 8 hours of research, or, in the case of Villa, fun and games with Cat, and then 8 hours sleep. It was not a routine that made for friendliness, conversation, or jollity. But eventually the routine was broken. The problem started with Blake. "I am sustaining interference," the computer announced. "What?" asked Villa, on watch at the time. Unhelpfully, Blake repeated itself. "What sort of interference?" demanded Villa. "My primary circuits controlling the directional computers are malfunctioning. Each time overrides are implemented, the override itself is broken." "You mean we're going off course?" "Not yet, but it could possibly happen. Meanwhile, the problem is spreading." Villa leaned across his control panel and pressed the intercom which worked throughout the whole ship. "Avon, I think you had better come here. Blake is having a heart attack." Instantly awake, Avon ran half the length of the ship to the control room, accused Villa of feeding adrenaline to the ship's computers, and demanded a report from the machine before he even reached his position. The computer remained silent. Avon looked at the bank of instrumentation that represented the ship's functions. "Run back the log from just before you called me," he told Villa. Villa did it, and Avon heard Blake's last remarks. After that, there was silence. Avon pressed the intercom and called Carell to the control room. He broke contact before there was time for a reply. "We appear to have full functions as long as we operate manually," Carell told him when she arrived. "But with the auto-repair circuits out, it's going to be a long job to sort out the faults." Avon moved across to the computer console and started to remove plates of controls, chips, and circuits. He was stopped by Carell. "We're moving off course," she said. "Then put us back on course. You're the pilot." Carell ignored the comment. "There's a planetary system about 20 light-years away. We seem to be slowing down and bearing away to it." "Compensate," ordered Avon. "Put us back on the right course and stay with it. Call me if there is a fraction of deviation. Villa, start removing the alpha sections of the master computer." And with that, Avon crawled under the main panel at the front of the system and started removing plates of circuitry. As he did so, a background noise appeared to come from Blake. Villa let slip the plate he was removing. "Dropping delicate computer equipment is not the best way to repair it," said Avon. "I couldn't help it," Villa complained. "It was hot." Disbelieving, Avon touched the plate and removed his hand quickly. He turned to the main bank of instrumentation and touched it gingerly. That, too, was overheating. Meanwhile, the background sound was getting louder and definitely coming from Blake. "Are we still on course?" Carell confirmed. "Then start shutting down all non-essential functions to get rid of that noise." As Carell obeyed, the sound increased. "It's music," Villa announced. "It's Blake playing music." "Not like I've ever heard," said Carell. She sat back in her chair, listening intently. Avon turned to her angrily. "You are supposed to be turning the systems off, not listening to the background." Carell regained her concentration. "Still on course. All the circuits are responding." "Good. Now keep shutting down and try and remove that noise from Blake." But Carell's hands hardly moved towards the console. Villa, too, had stopped moving. Avon called instructions above the sounds, but the others seemed not to hear. He repeated his commands. Carell heard him, but refrained from continuing the shutdown. She sat, eyes wide, staring impassively straight ahead. The sound seemed to be telling her something. It was nothing specific, but instead something symbolic, about way of life, about people, about how to live. For a moment, she wanted to say she had more important things on her mind than symbolic theorizing and sociological speculation, but the sounds were insistent. It was as if they were able to make a direct line for centers of meaning deep within her brain. She saw images that were not images at all, pictures with no form, stories telling her that life didn't have to be like this, that everything could be different as long as she listened. It was as if she was being invited to look beyond the horizon, over the edge of the planet, over the edge of the galaxy, perhaps even beyond the very edge of the universe itself, into something beyond the curve of existence, beyond reality itself. Avon watched what was happening to his crew. He tried to pull himself across the floor of the ship, but the sounds were insistent. Carell was right. It was music like he had never heard before, reminding him of things past, of his family. Even Kat became absorbed. The small computer began to follow the lead of his larger brother. The two computers began to play together. As the sound built up, Carell sat impassively watching the controls, until she eventually understood. The music needed resolving. There was more, and only if she heard more would she fully understand. She made minor adjustments to the controls. Revenge slowed and started moving off course. On the screens, fully operational but unseen by the crew, a star grew larger. It passed from the center of the screens, and a small dot grew into a blue-green planet covered in cloud. On the ship, only one entity remained free of the influence. Avon sensed it. "Avon," whispered Kat, "do not be misled. The influence is on the planet, sir. It works through the tarial cells, not direct into your nervous system. Mind goes straight to the neural links, and this isn't mind." But Avon's consciousness had gone, buried behind the all-pervading noise, rising now to a vast climax as Revenge was brought into land. In a small spaceport, in the northern hemisphere of a planet not even marked on the ship's computer-updated star charts. The room was quite remarkable. Avon might even have considered it beautiful had he bothered to cultivate a sense of aesthetics. There were long wooden tables probably carved by hand, exquisite high-backed chairs, and tall, pure blue candles burning brightly on all sides. Above, there was a balcony that those born on Earth 1,000 years before might have recognized as a minstrel's gallery. That Avon saw it merely as a means of possible escape was neither here nor there to his captors. Gaining consciousness, Avon rapidly tested his options for movement. Arms, hands, legs, head, and discovered himself not to be held in place by any restraints. Moving cautiously, he found he could put the weight on his legs. He raised himself, just far enough to acknowledge that there were no hidden force shields. He logged the information for future use. To his left was Villa, sleeping peacefully. To his right, Carell, at the same stage as Avon in assessing the current situation. Across the table sat 3 well-dressed and apparently unarmed gentlemen. They were busy discussing matters in low voices, paying scant attention to their prisoners. Avon turned his head to check the exit routes. Still no restraints. To his right, a range of windows looked onto a massive lawn. It was impossible to tell if they were plain glass or reinforced in some way. Straight ahead, a door slightly ajar led into what appeared to be a corridor. To his left, another door, wider open, leading into a lobby. Behind him, a door was almost shut. He seemed spoiled for choice. One of the 3 captors opposite noticed his movements. The low conversation stopped. The table was touched, and monitors appeared, rising from the surface and yet leaving the wooden appearance apparently unbroken. "Welcome to Gamma," announced the one sitting opposite Avon. "Under the constitution of the 5th Regency, I have to inform you that you are free to go at any time. However, allow me to try to prevail upon you to stay of your own free will. We would welcome the chance to discuss matters with you. Will you tell us your names? Before I tell you anything, will you tell us who you are and how you got us here?" "The suspicious nature of a Terran," replied the Gammaran, "but without the mindless threats that are bred within the Federation." "There is no point threatening what you do not know," said Avon tersely. "A logical position to take. We are 3 members of the Council of Representatives of the island of Shara, occupying our position by the grace of the Prince Gazri of Xlendi, in the northern hemisphere of the planet Gamma. I would tell you our names, but you will find them unpronounceable. Local culture dictates that if you wish to be polite, you will call us representatives. If you do not wish to be polite, you need not." Avon noticed the almost musical quality that existed in the voice of the Gammaran. It gave him his first recollection of what he had just experienced on Revenge. The voice continued, as if following Avon's own thought patterns. "We brought you here through simple hypnosis. Your race chooses to distinguish between hypnotic sounds and non-hypnotic by calling the former music. It is an old technique, one that your peoples had 1,000 years ago, but then outlawed for fear of the power it brought. You piloted your craft into land yourselves." "Why have you brought us here?" asked Carell. "To learn more of you, to offer to show you our way of life, to exchange technologies." "This all sounds very generous of you." "Not at all. Experience over the years has proven that merely inviting people of your race here is a waste of time. They either do not come at all, or come so heavily armed that war is inevitable. So now we make the invitation a little more real, a little more personal. Simply, the logic of your situation suggests that firstly you should verify your position by leaving. Then you should return, because there is every chance that an exchange of views and knowledge could benefit you. Take a look at our society, our civilization, our culture. You will find we have some things to offer you, but at heart we are a simple rural people." "Forgive me if I seem ungrateful or ungenerous," said Carell, "but that is not the logical situation. If we attempt to leave and put our ship in orbit, you can always bring us back. We will not learn the validity of your claim until we take the ship totally out of orbit and away from the influence of your music. And besides, rural environments can be dangerous." She looked at Avon. "A wise analysis," replied the representative. "You have the choice to make." A sound came from Avon's right. Villa had woken up and caught the gist of the conversation. "Let's leave." "No," Avon was emphatic. "At least let us ask a few more questions of our hosts." He turned back to those sitting opposite. "Do you have space travel?" A good first question. Yes, we do. But we do not use it as you do to fly across the galaxy. We have no empire. Even our own planet is divided into many states, each independent of the others. We travel only to secure raw materials and basic food supplies from uninhabited or sparsely inhabited planets in the vicinity of Gamar. Do you have teleport? No, but if you have, then we could start our exchange of technologies. We do not have teleport on our current ship, and we need certain raw materials to build the system. Do you have ships capable of making voyages over several hundred light-years rapidly? Yes, we have that technology. You may also like to note that we have an anti-gravity field that links with your own type of fusion reactors as used in the ramjets of your spacecraft. Is that good? Whispered Villa. The speed generated by the ramjets is determined by the amount of interstellar matter that can be picked up as the ship travels in deep space. That matter is used to feed the fusion engines. So there is a finite limit to how fast a ramjet fusion engine can go. Time to sort 12 is about the maximum. Liberator could go much faster, but we never had a good enough engineer on board to work out how they did it. But an anti-gravity device could push the limits up considerably. Avon, warming to his theme through his explanation to Villa, turned back to the Gamarans. We could do a deal. You secure the materials, and we build the system. Avon, Villa whispered urgently. Avon chose to ignore him. I shall prepare you a list of materials we need. There is not much, and then direct the building of 2 systems, one for our ship and one for you. In the meantime, we shall return to our ship. A rapid deal, well arranged, said the representative. My colleagues here will show you the way. The way shown was out through the left-hand door, into the lobby, down 3 stone steps, and through a magnificent old wooden door out into the cool evening air under a bright orange sun. They walked along a gravel path, with the large stone building on one side and hedges and bushes obscuring the view of the other. The edge of the building was reached, the corner turned, and Revenge was standing on a large concrete apron. A buggy took the crew across to the ship. They boarded. Carell thanked the buggy driver and closed the airlock doors. Straight up, no orbit, said Avon as they reached the control room. Blake, I want a silent replay of the events leading to our landing on the planet, rerun from the moment there was the first interference. On the screens reappeared the pattern of stars as the ship approached its present location. The action was eerie in its silence, the voices of the crew, like the music, unheard. The replay told Avon little, but that the ship was clearly guided down by Carell, presumably under the influence of the sounds that had affected all 3 of them. Report on the nature of the interference. I don't know what it was, said Blake. The machine is correct, said Carell, checking her own data. The interference got at the computer as well as at us. In fact, it looks from this data as if the interference actually came via the computers. Madame, if I may disagree, not all the computers. Everyone turned. It was the voice of Kat. Since when did you start giving advice that wasn't asked for? Said Villa. Since the moment my abilities started to be maligned, sir. The interference you speak of was a simple radion transmission picked up and amplified through Tariel cells. Any computer, including the ship's master computer which you refer to as Blake, is bound to be affected. I did try to counter it with a wave emission of my own, but we were too close to the source by then. And you are not affected by the sound, said Carell, joyfully accepting the irony of the situation, because you are not based on the Tariel cell. And Avon knew all the time. That explains a lot. Not to me it doesn't, said Villa. Corell is absolutely correct, sir, which is why I presume you so rarely consult my databanks. Not that it is a concern of mine, since it leaves me free to consider wider aspects of some of the finer substances invented by mankind. But on this occasion... On this occasion, you felt the need to point the error out, said Corell. And if you felt that this was the time to point something out, it follows you have something else worth pointing out that reveals your inestimable value. Fire away. Madam, you have the advantage of me, replied Cat, with an air of humoured indignation. Give us your replay of the interference, said Avon. Cat's replay included sound and was projected through Blake onto the ship's main screens. In itself, it told the crew little, although Corell noted that Avon had deliberately not consulted Cat immediately, even though he probably already knew about the Tariel cell link with the sounds from Gamma. The only other point of interest was that the replay also showed that Avon still retained an interest in that strange something called mind. Avon certainly seemed to be trying to argue with Cat about it as he lurched in and out of consciousness before the ship landed. Corell looked for an explanation. Avon, however, chose to be evasive. It may exist, he said, but here and now it is nothing of importance, and certainly nothing to do with this affair. Corell, on the other hand, chose the moment to develop her inquiries. She addressed herself to Cat. Explain the use of the word mind in Avon's comments during the interference, she said, precise as ever. Mind is reputed to be an entity, madame. There have been rumours for several years that someone or something exists which is touching on human affairs and in some way controlling them. Mind is a legend, but a legend with a difference. There are two normal types of legend. First, legends which come from events long, long past, such as the legend of Hista, who attempted to destroy the Earth 1,000 years ago. Then there are legends based on a degree of truth surrounding recent events, such as the legend of Blake's 7, which is now spread throughout the galaxy. It is based roughly on truth, but there are certain differences in important matters. For example, all right, Cat, said Avon. I think we have a fair idea of what the Blake 7 legend is all about. But mind is different, sir. Mind is said to exist now, although no one knows what it is. And yet people believe it exerts a presence, an influence. I never took you for the suspicious type, said Corell. But I can see why you consult Cat on the subject. If mind does exist, then it exists separately from the omnipotent Tariel cell, which means it is free from interference by Aurak. This begins to explain things. Avon remained silent. Cat answered for him. Sir, if I may speak. Madame, Avon feels that mind has been attempting to influence him, communicate with him, for some time. Corell reviewed the facts. Mind is supposed to be some sort of highly logical being taking an active part in human affairs, right? There was no reply. So why do you feel it is getting at you? Avon became irritated, but he refrained from taking further refuge in silence. Events have taken place during the last few years which I have sought to understand. I have examined all possibilities, including the existence of the legend of mind. I do not believe that mind is purely influencing me, any more than I believe that mind is some sort of pure energy force of intellect floating around the galaxy, which is what the popular belief says. Matters remain to be explained. From time to time, I look for an explanation. Corell was by now totally fascinated and would not let go of the subject. Cat, give me a rundown of episodes in Avon's recent life which may be put down to the influence of mind. No, shouted Avon. "This is a pointless waste of time, when we have to decide what to do about Gamma." "Are you afraid of something?" suggested Villa, hoping at last to have found some sort of chink in Avon's seemingly impenetrable armour. "I am simply telling you that there is more important business at the present. Cat is now needed to solve the problem of Gamma, because if the Gammarans attack again, Cat is the only computer we have which can withstand the attack. If you start taking up our time debating why I happened to say one word during the last attack, we might as well surrender now." "Very well," said Carell. "Let's put mind in abeyance for the moment. What do you plan to do about Gamma?" "There is nothing to do about Gamma," said Villa. "For once we found a race of people who actually do not want to harm us. They don't have teleport. Avon knows how to build one, and they'll get the raw materials. Avon does the design work, and we all get what we want, including a freighter that can go as fast as Liberator. What's wrong with that?" "Nothing," said Avon, "if it is true. But what if this is just another happy band of people working for the Federation, or working for Servalan? Servalan already has Auric and Caro, which makes for a large amount of computing power, even in the hands of a technological illiterate like Servalan. With teleport as well, there is nothing she could not achieve." "I thought you said there was already nothing she couldn't get with access to the alternative universe through SCAT," said Villa. Avon was emphatic. "That knowledge gives her great power and a neat trick, a way of countering the Federation without having to match it with physical power, which she'll never do. But with the situation developing as it is, the end will be messy. At some stage, she will have to attack the administration on Earth whilst still attacking the command HQ of the Federation, and that will be her time of greatest weakness and our opportunity. But if she gets the teleport..." "So why did you offer it to them then if you think they're Servalan's men?" "Because for a prize that big, they will take risks, and they have risked letting us get back on the ship." Avon turned his attention to the small box. "What defense can there be against another attack from the sound waves from Gamma?" Cat was clear. "Sir, there is but one solution. As soon as the emissions from the planet begin, I can put out a counterpulse which will neutralize the sounds. Sir, they will render them harmless. Unpleasant, but harmless, sir." Villa was unable to restrain his delight that a machine he had discovered had proved to be so valuable. His only concern was that Avon seemed to be getting more sirs out of Cat than he was. "Sir, I feel that I must add, however, that there is one condition. I feel, sir, that such heroic work, and if I may say, such demanding and unpleasant work as this, requires a little reward. Villa, sir, you play with me. Try out a little of this, a little of that. It is a load I have to bear, sir, for that is my function. But it is now so long, sir, since I had a chance to partake of a little parahyrene, the kind Avon gave me a little at the space station." "Avon gave it to you at the station?" "It mixed well with the A and S." "A and S?" queried Villa. He feigned ignorance. "Adrenaline and soma," Carell patiently reminded him. "Ah, yes. I think I may have inadvertently given some to Cat once. Never touch it myself." "Sirs, madam, may I suggest parahyrene plus a little adrenaline and soma would be a suitable reward for such tasks as you now require me, a poor, humble, kinesthetic analysis and transmission machine, to perform?" "Villa," said Carell with mock anger, "you are harbouring a computer that is drug-dependent. If it had ever happened before, it would be a crime by now." "It wasn't me. Avon gave it to Cat." "Correction," said Avon. I gave it to Kat once on leaving the space station. You gave it to Kat once before as we approached Scat. Remember the wall? Kat's projection? Asked Villa meekly. He had been scared witless by the mental projections of a computer, and not just once, but twice. Avon turned to Kat. Very well, he announced. But you only get to the reward after we are safely away from Gamma. If you touch the stuff before then, there's no telling what sort of counterwave you'll put out. Corel, lock up every drop of adrenaline, soma, and parahyrene you can find on the ship. I don't want Villa consuming our chances of survival. No, wait. Villa's the thief. He'll only steal it. Give it to me for safekeeping. Kat, I will hand it over when your tasks are successfully completed. Sir, you are most gracious, Kat told him. Avon smiled broadly. Returning to establish a distant orbit from the planet, Avon gave orders to the Gamerans for the raw materials he required for teleport construction. The details were received without comment, other than an assurance that work would proceed forthwith. Avon then set the ship's computers upon a variety of tasks, without a word to Corel or Villa, leaving each of them once again to their own devices. Eventually, it grew too much for Villa, and he wandered disconsolately down to Avon's cabin. Avon looked at the thief with disdain. Villa, he declared, this is not the time for idle chatter. It may not be for you, but it is for me. You deprive me of everything I need for medicinal purposes. I can't talk to Kat because it is on full alert. You've turned most of Blake offline because of Gamma-ran interference. Corel won't speak because she's too busy trying to analyse logically what makes you tick. And she has to do it without a computer. And I still don't know what is going on. If the Gamma-rans come up with the goods, then what? Do we go back down? Do we direct them from here? Would it make much difference to you, Villa, whatever I told you? It might. I might refuse to cooperate if I didn't like the scheme. I could leave the ship. I don't like being pushed around by you, Avon. It would be bizarre if you did. Just keep out of my way until those people down there get back to us with a report. It looked for a moment as if Villa was going to continue the argument, but he felt dejected and uninspired, and finally welcomed the interruption caused by the communication channel springing to life. One of the representatives of the Gamma-rans announced simply on all screens that all materials had been gathered, and work was now ready to begin. Avon appeared relaxed, acknowledging the call and stating that he would be ready in 1 hour with instructions. Then he ran at full speed to the flight deck, touched a dozen controls to bring Blake back online, and commanded a full report from the machine. A long series of numbers appeared on the main screen, which Avon studied intently. To Villa they meant nothing. To Corel their importance became rapidly apparent. As the number sequence ended, Avon turned and noticed Corel. "That should make interesting reading for you," he said. "It's the locations of the various items that you listed as essential for the building of the teleport. Half of them at least are not the slightest bit necessary. Why did you send them on a wild goose chase?" "To find out where they got the items." "But you knew exactly where they were available." "And so did they. At least they found out very quickly. And in some cases they went straight to Federation strongholds, removed substantial amounts of infinitely valuable materials, and brought them back here. How did they know where to go? How did they manage to find what they wanted so quickly? How is it that there are no panic buttons being pushed on every single Federation planet within 100 light-years of here?" "I presume," said Corel coolly, "that those are rhetorical questions." "They are, inasmuch as I know the possible answers. One is that they are allies of the Federation. Another is that they do have powers far beyond what we have yet imagined, powers to subdue whole planets with their sound waves, for example, without the authorities knowing that anything untoward is happening. Or last, Someone tipped off the Federation what was happening, and the order was given to let the Gamorreans have their bits and pieces. Now, which one is it? What wonderful logical imponderables you do set up, Corell replied. You have no way of knowing as things stand, since you have two suspects, and neither can verify or deny anything, since you distrust both suspects. You daren't tell the Gamorreans how to build the teleport because you still don't trust them. You are also unsure of me, and yet if you decide I am the traitor, you are still not sure if the Gamorreans can be trusted, even if they are not working for the Federation. She laughed out loud. This is the best yet. Avon, what are you going to do? Avon turned and let out a smile. Villa saw it and leapt to the ground. Both Avon and Corell turned to him in amazement. After a few seconds, Villa raised his head slightly and looked up. Seeing that he was not threatened, he rather sheepishly got to his feet. Sorry, he said. It's that smile of yours, Avon. Last time I saw you look that way, you had just shot Blake. I thought it was going to start again. You can relax, Avon told him. What Corell says is true. She could be a spy in our midst. The Gamorreans could have great powers, or they could be working for the Federation. So what will you do? On Corell, I reserve judgment. Thank you, Avon, she replied mockingly. Most magnanimous. As for the Gamorreans, I think there should be a modification in procedure. He punched the controls in front of his position, and the leading representative of the Gamorreans came on the screen. There has been a slight change of plan, Avon said. I shall build the teleport here, on Revenge. There were no objections from below. Send up a ship, Avon continued, with all the materials on board. It can dock with us, and we shall transfer everything into the hold. The Gamorrean agreed instantly and happily. Shortly, a ship took off from the surface carrying the materials. Docking and offloading went without a hitch, and Avon was left to work on the teleport project. If the Gamorreans harboured any concern about Avon's change of plan, they showed not the slightest sign. Once more, with time on his hands, Villa conversed with the now liberated Blake. The computer's view was that the lack of concern from the planet below was not surprising. They could have no knowledge that Cat was able to counteract their operations, and so would feel safe to let Avon continue his work. But, added Blake, there is one thing you should know. With the equipment Avon has and the knowledge he has of teleport, which although virtually unparalleled is nonetheless limited, it will take him around 4.5 years to construct even a working model. Then, assuming that no faults are discovered in the model system, it will take a further 3 years to develop a full-scale operating teleport. Long before Blake's convoluted sentence had ended, Villa had spat his drink out in surprise. Do the Gamorreans know this? Probably. And they are prepared to wait. If they do believe that they have Revenge and its crew captured, then they have all the time in the world. They can leave us up here, forget about us if need be, and carry on with their normal day-to-day activity. Is Avon really building a teleport then? Yes, but that does not appear to be his main priority. What is he building then? That I cannot determine. But between us we could solve the problem, Villa. There was a change in the machine's voice that made Villa uneasy as Blake continued. Simply go into the hold where he is working and observe. Then come back and let me know what is going on. I will then deduce the solution. Reluctantly, Villa agreed. He started making his way through the narrow corridors of the ship towards the hold, when a sudden thought struck him. He touched an intercom pad on the wall. Blake, there are computer monitors throughout the ship. Why don't you monitor Avon yourself? Avon has turned the monitors off in the hold to stop me observing. He is becoming dangerously secretive. I must know what is going on. For the safety of the ship, Villa. Villa let go the pad and walked on towards the hold. The main door refused to open to his touch command. He banged on it and shouted for Avon. An opening appeared just wide enough to let Villa enter. All around him was electrical circuitry, computer panels, and silicon wiring. It was difficult for Villa to make any sense of the mess. Virtually the whole floor was covered. Avon looked at Villa impassively. "Yes?" he asked. I just came down to make sure you were all right." "Very kind, Villa. Yes, I am." "Good. Nothing I can do for you?" "Yes." "What?" "Go away." Villa did as he was told, taking a final look round, but knowing it was going to be impossible to give a true impression of what the room was like. It had also struck him that the deal with Cat meant he was going to have to go without access to the finer liquids of life for 7 years. Blake, however, was able to make more of it than Villa had guessed. As Villa described the mess and confusion, the machine disengaged other functions, analysing the information and comparing it with existing data. At the conclusion, it gave a courteous "Thank you, Villa," before apparently shutting down. Villa, however, was not so easily appeased. He demanded an answer. After a moment, the machine condescended to reply. "Avon is up to something, Villa, but I need time to consider his actions and the materials he is using. I will report back to you as soon as I possibly can."